I don't know why the book of Daniel has been one of my favorites for a long time. I've always liked that character, probably because of the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and probably because of the story of Daniel in the lion's den. I've loved it. And I can picture in my head the coloring pages that I used to do vacation Bible school, right? You have this little kid, this little guy, or sometimes they got it a little bit right, and he was an older guy, but he's on his knees and he's praying and the lions are kind of gathered around him. You color it, right? There was, I don't know, 25 years ago at Family Christian Store, they had a big print of a famous painting of Daniel in the Lion's Den, and I loved it so much. And my friends bought it for me for a birthday present, and I had it for probably 20 years before I got rid of it. But I love this print. It's just beautiful. It's a cool story. A couple of things. One, Daniel has already been in Babylon for about 70 years. We know that the second year he was in Babylon, he was already ruling in Babylon. So contrary to the kids' books version of this, Daniel wasn't 8 when they took him into Babylon. He was a young man, probably in his late teens. And so at this point now, in Daniel in the Lion's Den, Daniel is in the neighborhood of his 80s, probably mid to late 80s, early 90s even maybe. And so Daniel gets thrown into the lion's den. It's similar to what we talked about last week, but let's tell the children's version of it first. So there are some guys that don't like Daniel. They're trying to get him out of power. And so they go to the king and they say, hey, king, make a decree that no one can pray to you, to anyone but you for 30 days. And if they pray to anyone but you, any God but you, they're calling the king God. They're stroking his ego. And they say, if anyone prays to anyone but you for the next 30 days, throw him to the lion's den. And the king Darius, he's like, I love it. And this is the Persian Empire now, not the Babylonian Empire. The Persians have ousted the Babylonians. And apparently in the Persians, in the Mede Empire, if you make a law, no one can break it, not even the king. So the king signs a law into effect and no one can undo it. Well, the reason these guys wanted this law in place was because Daniel prayed 3 times a day to God and they're trying to get him out of power. And so they go and they spy on him and they see him praying 3 times a day, just like he had before. And they go and tell the king, and the king reluctantly throws Daniel into the lion's den, covers it. And then God sends an angel to shut the mouths of the lion. And the king comes back the next morning and he says, Daniel, has the God whom you serve been able to protect you? And he says, yes. And so he lifts Daniel out. And that's probably where most of us in the story for our kids, except for that's not the end of the story, because then the king took these men and their wives and their kids who had conspired against Daniel and threw them into the lion's den. And it says before they hit the ground, every single one of them had their bones crushed by the lions. And so they don't even hit the ground before the lions start ripping these guys to pieces. And it's not just a few people, because there, it could be as many as 120 people, 120 families, because there were 120 people that Daniel was over that were conspiring against him. And so Daniel's been in authority for 70 years. He's a foreigner. He's not a Babylonian. The Babylonians are now the servants of the Persians and the Medes. And again, the situation here isn't just Daniel's faithfulness to God. That's important. Daniel was faithful to God. He continued to pray, even when he knew it would cost him being thrown into the lion's den. Again, I'll remind you what I said last week. Don't say, if you serve the Lord faithfully, you'll be rescued from the mouths of lions, because the end of the first century, early second century, that wasn't the case for a lot of our brothers and sisters in Christ who were thrown to the wild beasts. And so Daniel goes and he's thrown into the lion's den. But look at the result of this. So remember, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was years earlier, decades earlier, and was under the Babylonian Empire. This is now the Persian Empire. And so this is Daniel 6:19. The king rose at dawn and at the break of day went in haste to the lion's den. When he had come near the den to Daniel, he cried out with a troubled voice. The king spoke and said, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you constantly serve been able to deliver you? And Daniel said, O king, live forever. So then Darius, this is verse 25, Darius the king wrote to all the peoples, all the nations, and the men of every language who are living in all the land, may your peace abound. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom, men are to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom is one which will never be destroyed. His dominion will be forever. These are such powerful statements. And he delivers and rescues and performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has also delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. And so when we talk about this story, we ought to talk about that. This is the living God. This is the one who endures forever. This is the one whose kingdom, which will never be destroyed. His dominion is forever. This is God being revealed to the nations again as the living God, the one who is full of power, the one whose kingdom and dominion never come to an end. And then the juxtaposition is really nice, even though it wouldn't have happened in this order. But the juxtaposition is really nice that in chapter 7, Daniel is recorded as having... Daniel 7 would have happened a couple of decades earlier, or at least a few years earlier before chapter 6. But Daniel has this vision of Christ coming up to the Father, the Ancient of Days. Jesus comes up to the Ancient of Days, and he receives from God. Christ receives from God a kingdom. And this is what it says. I kept looking, here you go. I kept looking in the night visions. This is Daniel 7:13. And behold, with the clouds of heaven, there was one like a son of man. And he came and he stood before the Ancient of Days, so Jesus and God, and was presented before the Ancient of Days. And to him, to the Son of Man, to Christ, was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all the peoples, all the nations, and men of every language would serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will never pass away. His kingdom is one which will never be destroyed. So that all the peoples, all the nations, and all the languages would serve him. And then what did it say over here? Darius wrote a decree to all the men of all the language and all the nations, that this is the king whose dominion is forever. And so that juxtaposition between Daniel 6 and 7 is important because it's showing us ultimately that this is Christ. And so we have to tie that together. We have to bring all of that down. Don't just say Daniel was obedient and Daniel was brave and Daniel prayed even when there was a threat of death and God saved him anyway. Yay, Daniel. It's not yay, Daniel, it's yay, Jesus. Like, fill it back with the truth of Christ. Put Jesus back into the text. And can I just say this? Like, let's know our Bibles a little bit better. Let's quit being these people who just go, oh, it's a great kid story, isn't it? It's really inspiring. No, it's really revealing of the truth of God and Jesus. And so, incredible story. I loved it. I didn't love it for the right reasons as a kid. That's for sure. But what we can do is we can do better, and we can make sure that we understand the depth of these stories, and we can make sure that our kids and our grandkids and anybody that we have the opportunity to talk to about these kinds of stories won't view them just as kids' stories. They'll view them as the revelation of Jesus Christ. All right, that's week 4. Join me next week. We're going to go on to Jonah and the whale, right? Jonah and the big fish, big famous kids story. We'll talk about that next time. See you next week.